It's another technical video. Yay! Let's talk about rigging. So, I've gotten a lot of help from people over the past couple of days. They've stopped by my YouTube videos and left very educational comments about what I've gotten wrong or more resources I can go to get more information. And that has really sped up the process because, as I mentioned, I've never made a 3D avatar system before. I've made 3D characters, I've made 2D avatar systems, but not this. And I have managed to sidestep a lot of things that would have just totally floored me for weeks. But I haven't actually gotten the avatar system off the ground yet. So I figured I would make a technical video about the skeleton I'm going to be using and the rigging I'll be using. Because that seems like a pretty core concept, and maybe some of those people who had good advice for me on other parts of the avatar system will have good advice for me here. So what I've done is I've loaded up a character with Make Human's default skeleton. Now, the one I use in the game at the moment is actually a Unity skeleton. It's not nearly this dense, and it's not going to be useful, so I'm not going to be able to use it. This has a lot of extra bones in the fingers and the toes and the boobs, but it's also got a lot of extra bones in the head. So what I wanted to talk about is the difference between bones which morph the head and bones which animate the face. As I understand it now, apparently Uma uses bones to scale facial portions, and all of the stuff I thought was a mesh edit was actually a bone edit. That's pretty impressive. I'm not sure how well that plays with the ability to animate the facial expressions using complex bone structures like this. Depending on what I find, I may have to continue using mesh edits, just Blender key shapes, Blender shape keys, to create distinctive, character features like noses and stuff. But I still have some things that I'm going to need to use bone edits in order to change them. And those are the big three: the left eye, the right eye, and the mouth. So when you are identifying humans, the computer program first grabs that triangle, and the first pass it does is to determine how far apart the eyes are and how far above the mouth they are and that sort of stuff. And that's actually a fairly unique identifier. That gives the program a lot of information to work from. And if that's what an identifying program picks as its first target, then I think that should be what our pick is for the first thing that changes, because that's obviously what is most distinct. And this kind of backs up, this is backed up by a lot of my experience as someone who can't see very well. When your faces all have the same eye sockets at the same depth, at the same width, and they've all got a mouth at the same height, the shadows that get cast across the face are always the same. Whether you've got a big nose or a small nose, or a huge chin or not a tiny chin, the core shadows on the center of your face are mostly determined by the depth and position of your eye sockets and the height of your mouth, short versus long-faced. Most games don't use natural lighting, and maybe mine won't either, but I think that this hides that fact. For example, Sims 4 does not have, as far as I can tell, any sort of adjustments for this. But they still get a very unique set of characters because they use movie lighting for everything. You never see natural light being cast across the character's face, so you never notice that everyone has the exact same shadow pattern. But you do notice that in reality, and it's the first thing I see, especially when it's out of the corner of my eye, or whether they're at a distance I can't really see very well. And so for me, I think it's important that I support characters with different sorts of eye sockets, different narrowness, different width from each other, different depth, different shallowness, and that will vary up the heights that they can be at. It'll be good. I can also support different heights of jaw, which is different heights of mouth, which is also quite straightforward. But those are morphing bones. Mouse wheel's really sensitive. Those are morphing bones, and the rest of these bones are expression bones. So if I were to screw this up, I could easily lose all of these wonderful structures that help me to give my characters expressions and make them animate, fun facial animations and talk and all that stuff. If I'm going to use bones to animate the face, I need to be super careful that the bones I use to morph the face don't interfere. Yep, That's important. So I have a lot of questions about this bone structure setup, and I'm going to go over them. I'm going to try and figure out what I want, how I'm going to edit this, because this is not the skeleton I'm going to use. I'm going to use an edited version. And if you are familiar with how this stuff works, feel free to correct me or give me more resources. So first things first, I noticed that this is a really, really long bone, and I couldn't figure out for a while why that is, until I realized that what it does is it allows you to really move the lips quite far without having the left side skew out and the right side skew in, or vice versa. If you have a long lever like this, then when you move the mouth, you don't get a lot of skew. It just moves horizontally in a roughly realistic manner. So I think that's really clever, and it works really well. So kudos to the people who developed the skeleton, or whoever thought of that idea first, because I would not have thought of it. I would have put the bone like right here, and the lips would have just been terrible. So let's take a look at the jaw. The jaw structure is hopefully an easy place to start, because jaws are relatively easy to understand. But if I were to rotate this, you can see how the jaw is actually jointed correctly. This is this is where the joint actually is. Maybe it's a little high, but probably not. And that means that we get a very realistic sort of jaw down system going. But what I don't like is it's really unrealistic when it's open very far. I don't know whether there's any way to correct that. I think if there was a way to correct that, we probably would have already seen it. But that's okay. Most of the time when you see someone who's shouting, you're going to be seeing them from the front. So I guess that's probably fine. And of course, all of the lips and tongue come along with that. The lower lips and tongue come along with that and can be animated separately. I think that this is just a structural element. I don't think maybe someone animates with that. I'm trying to figure out what sort of animations. I guess you can pull your lip back in and be like, "Fuck yeah." I guess that's what you use it for. Does it work on the z-axis? Maybe. Yeah, I guess that's what it's for. I was wondering why it was a solid bone instead of just a link, but I think that it might be because I thought it was Alt-R. Alt-R. Rotate. Oh, that's the wrong bone. There we are. So I think that's good. And then, of course, we've got the lip bones. And I think these lip bones are all great. I'll keep all of them as is, I think. The tongue bones, I don't have any opinion on. Maybe I'll cull them a little bit. I don't think I'll need to be able to roll my tongue. But I think that's fine. So the nose bone. Trying to figure out what this is for. I guess it allows you to flare your nostrils. Isn't that what these do, though? No. Okay, so those are actually just smile animators. Okay, so this does allow you to flare your nostrils if you scale it. Is this a bone? Is this primarily a face morph bone? I guess so. Oh, that's interesting. Well, if you know the exact nature of this, it's called Special 03, so that's not much help. This, on the other hand, definitely allows us to do things like flare our nostrils and, So I think these bones are great. The only problem I have with these bones is if I use a facial morph, mesh morph, to change the size of the nose, these are not going to be centered on the nose anymore. They're not going to be centered on exactly where the nostrils are. So if I want to have nose animations, I'm going to have to be careful. Maybe I will have to use a bone morph to change the fundamental size of the nose, the length on the face, because I don't think I can do it with meshes if I'm going to have nostril bones. That doesn't seem very wise. Now, these guys here are fine. I'm not sure why there are so many, but I guess they all have their own feeling as you animate with them. That's cool. Yeah, I like that. Obviously, eyelids and eye bones are fine, but I need to be able to move the whole eye socket in every direction. And I'm going to be probably using a transform, or rather a translate rather than a rotate, just because that makes more sense. But this is the bone that they're attached to. I don't know why this bone is the way it is. It seems odd, but I noticed that from a screenshot I saw, Uma seemed to have a bone in the same spot, or maybe even more. If I were to move these, though, first off, you can see it's not actually attached to the eye socket. It is just attached to those 3 bones. I don't think it has any additional verts attached to it other than those 3 bones, which means it's here just to edit those 3 bones at the same time. So for my purposes, it makes sense that what we can do is just detach this bone. So if we were to go into edit mode here and click over here, go to the bone. Oh, interesting. I don't know what all these mean. I'm not used to using Blender's bone system. Interesting. Well, I'll try and figure that out later. The point is that this is not going to work for animating for moving the eye socket, but it might be the right bone, just not in exactly the right spot. Because when I move the eye socket, I need the eye bone and the eyelid bones to go along with it. The question is whether I need the eyelid bones to go with it, because these eyelid bones are currently bound to the top of the skull. So, sorry, eyebrow. Did I say eyelid? These eyebrow bones are currently tied to the top of the skull. So the question is, if I need to have these move left, right, up, down, do I want the brow bones to go with them, or do I want to move the brow bones separately? Because it's possible for me to just unlock this and move the brow bones separately. So if I were to move the eyelids, or sorry, if I were to move the eye structure, the whole eye socket, 0.5, whatever that is, up, I could move the eyebrow like 0.25 up, and I could just link them. I'm not sure what the best answer is there, but I don't want the eyebrow bones to just go along with it, because I have to be able to move the socket shallower and deeper. And if the eyebrows just follow the eye socket bone, then that's not going to happen. They're always going to be the same depth. They'll just be a weird, distorted face. So if any of you know what this bone is for, please let me know. These kind of antenna bones, I can't fathom what they're for. Are they for scaling purposes? I mean, I suppose they do scaling relatively well. Scale on the x-axis, make your eyes wider. That must be it. They must be scaling bones. In which case, they're still the exact same bones I need, but I'm not sure why the heck they're way up here. Let me know if you know. So, cheekbones. This is another situation where I'm not 100% sure that these are going to be safe for me to use. As I change the structure of the face, the cheeks are an obvious target. So the question is, do I use these bones to change the structure of the cheek, or do I use these bones to animate the cheek? I can't do both, at least not easily. So, obviously, a lot of expressions do use the cheeks, and they bunch up when you smile, like, you know, like this. And I think that's an important way to do it. That gives a very natural sort of flow to the face. So I think that they're animations. They're for animations rather than for deformations. But if I deform the cheek around them, is that going to screw up the animations? These are annoying questions to have to ask, and I imagine that the answer is go do it and find out. But I figured I'd record a technical video about it and get some advice on what you folks think is the right approach. If you know of a special way to get these skeletons to do both facial morphing and facial animating, let me know. But as far as I can tell, there's just not enough room for both the facial morphs and the facial animations. If you morph a bone, then you change its scaling, its rotation, its position, And if you animate a bone, you're going to be changing those same elements. You have to be extremely careful. You have to be very careful about how you animate things and how you morph things. I guess what you could do is you could limit all animations to rotation only, and you could limit all morphs to scaling and translation only. And then, as long as you stayed true to that, you could do anything you needed, but you couldn't use mocap. At least not any of the mocap animations I've seen, because they all overwrite everything. Well, as compared to things like making clothes fit other characters and other industry non-standard stuff, this is pretty straightforward, and I don't really foresee any huge issues. The big reason I guess I wanted to make this video, in addition to getting advice, is it gives me an excuse to work on space stations instead of people. And that's kind of nice, because I just started getting into the economic portion of the game, and space stations are critical to that. And so I'm, thinking if I can get technical help on the characters and let it simmer for a while in the background, I can work on something that's more high profile and immediately interesting today and tomorrow. So if you have any advice about this stuff or know any good links about this stuff, let me know.